today we're really happy to have her as our speaker and our honorary doctorate recipient, Annie Calkins.
Thank you, John, for those kind words. I must start by saying what a profound honor it is to be here in this place at this celebration on this glorious spring day in Juneau. 40 years ago, it was a day like this that captured me, filled me up, and made me want to stay in Alaska. I had come straight from a Midwestern university with a degree in philosophy and English to Craig, a place where a number of you also first landed in Alaska. The superintendent of Craig City Schools had hired me to write 120 units of behavioral objectives to teach social studies for the first time in their elementary school. Not that I'd ever written a behavioral objective before, because I'd never taken a single education class to date. But right, I did, and then chose to stay and see what would happen when the teacher who was hired would teach what I had written. He, by the way, was freshly arrived from South Dakota on a motorcycle on an island that had a total of 7 miles of paved road. I became the teacher's aide, and I took education courses by correspondence. The real old-fashioned correspondence, where I would write papers and mail them back in the U.S. Postal Service to St. Louis. I earned a teaching degree in 2 states over the 3 years I was in Craig, without ever having taken a formal course. It was distance delivery, snail mail. Those of you who have taken most of your UAS courses via distance delivery know the speed dial version of what I mean. The Craig School at that time, in the mid-70s, had been selected by the National Institute of Education as one of 6 schools across the nation to revolutionize American education, to create a new model for meaningful learning in small communities. In Craig, the innovative signature was that it was authentically a community school. It was open every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In addition to the basics, everyone was welcome to teach whatever they wanted to share with students and with each other. I learned from Nathan Jackson, who came over from Ketchikan to work with John Staub in the shop, teaching us all carving. I taught alongside Florence Demrick, our Tlingit language teacher, who welcomed me into cultural events and introduced me to Northwest Coast art. I learned to weave sitting next to Selena Paratrovich, who spoke only to me in Tlingit. And I taught alongside Bonnie Duville, who was the first Alaska teacher to ever take a group of students to China, long, long before it was open to Western tourists. My experiences in Craig, school population 92, led me to believe that schooling really could be creative and generative, meaningful, personalized, caring, and endlessly fascinating, and that education itself could be a fine career. My Craig days were followed by work in the widely scattered Aleutian Region School District, whose 7 villages spanned a distance of over 1,000 miles. And then with Asper Folta Consultants, a small enterprising business like so many in Alaska, where 2 sisters in Haines decided to create wonderful place-based curriculum materials for rural preschools. I traveled to 27 villages across the interior and the Arctic in those years. I moved to Juneau in 1979 to work with Asper Folta because I loved the 2 days I had spent in Juneau the previous year, because it was known for the arts and culture, which means so much to me personally, and because it had a university. I didn't want to live in a city without a university. I enrolled in the Masters of Art Education program at UAS at the strong urging of my father, Frank, who had been a university professor of finance and corporate investments for 42 years. I still remember Lawrence Lee Oldacre's legal case challenges, Phil Hawker's statistics and research challenges, and Bob Weiss's complicated school finance cases. They filled many knowledge gaps for me as an educator. And I made good friends in this town that I had just moved to, friends who became colleagues as well when I moved to the Alaska Department of Education and then the Juneau School District. Throughout these years, there were many, many stories of teaching and learning on the last frontier. Like the story of Jimmy, who was a 4th grader from Craig, on the 3-week field trip that 26 children and I took in 1976 to Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. to celebrate the bicentennial. Upon arrival at Exeter Academy, where we were staying in the dorms, I noticed Jimmy across the room unpacking. Incredibly, out of his very large suitcase came a full-sized lamp, complete with the shade. His response to my question was, well, I really, really need to read before I go to sleep, and I wasn't sure that they have lamps in the lower 48. On that same trip, when the children and I were on a walking tour in Center City, Philadelphia, the sight of homeless people outside the Reading Market stopped them cold in curiosity. Why don't they have family or people to take care of them like we do at home when we drink too much or someone doesn't have food? An excellent question for life. Or the time when I was working with a preschool teacher in the village of Cactoget, east of Barrow, and staying with the principal, sleeping on her sofa, when loud banging on the front door woke us at 2 a.m. There, in parkas and mittens, was a crew of students out in the snowdrifts, urging us to join them outside to see the aurora borealis and to prove to us that whistling and shouting at the sky could move and vibrate those red and blue and green streamers. So out of the darkness came magic. I think about other snippets of my personal educational lure, like the time I had to transport old-fashioned wooden desks, the kinds that open, first in a Grumman goose and then on horseback, over hummocks and rocks to a one-room school on a tiny Aleutian island. Or when I took a group of 5th and 6th graders to the last great whaling feast in the old village of Point Hope before they moved it, where incredibly enough John Denver showed up as the entertainment. Or visiting a teacher in a village held together by one long boardwalk, being told that the kindergartners get to stay home if the wind is blowing over 85 miles an hour. Or facilitating a community meeting on the edge of the Bering Sea, where one wild, white-haired Yupik elder uncharacteristically stood up, pointed his finger, and shouted at me, "The federal government can't take away our language, can they?" Or the most memorable time, when I was marooned on a remote Aleutian island with a jumbo bag of M&Ms, a .308 rifle, one sleeping bag, and the man who would later become my husband, artist and writer Dave Hunsey. But my story is not unique in Alaska. Everyone in this room has a story to tell about beginnings in the land and on the campus. This place, this rich and bountiful space, affords all of us the opportunity to do things differently. Alaska, many of you know how the very word can turn heads and engage people in conversations about the land, the seas, and more recently, about our politics. It holds a special place in the collective imagination of people around the world. You are lucky to have spent time at UAS, however long you have been here. No matter that you came from Tokyo, majored in anthropology, and became fascinated with the baskets of this region, or if you grew up in Daia, of all small, out-of-the-way places, or if you came here from Kloak, 7 miles down the road from Craig, so that you could hunt and fish as well as take courses in mathematics, or if you came from Sequim, eager to see Alaska, taking advantage of all there is here to offer in marine biology and genetics, or even if you decided, after other careers and 35 years after first graduating from college, to study the arts, your real passion. UAS afforded you rich and diverse opportunities, and the community of Juneau offered you an environment in which to explore and define yourself. I trust that on this day in particular, you are proud of what you have learned here, how you have grown here, from the faculty, your network of friends, from the community of Juneau, and the community at large. My hope is that you will use what you know in creative and innovative ways. Our state, the country, indeed the world, really needs creative and innovative ideas and all the good solutions we can muster. The Tlingit people of this region are wise about what is important and authentic in life. I help group of 22 respected elders when they met several years ago to consider the tribal values that Dr. Walter Sobolov had espoused. They talked for 2 long days about making the wording more relevant to the young people of today. The values they drafted and recommended that were then adopted unanimously by the Tribal Assembly of Central Council offer good advice to you, even if you never had the opportunity to know any Tlingit, Haida, or Shinshan students while you were at UAS. On this day, as you leave one episode and create another, hopefully richer one, to those of you who would be the teachers, a noble profession, you must know that respect for self, elders, and others is the basis of all teaching and learning. And that as teachers and learners, we must hold each other up to be successful as human beings. To those of you who would be business leaders, listen well and with respect so that you may speak with care to all who you interact with. To the mathematicians and computer science leaders among you, I say humor is a good value to have at hand. To those of you who will study and research the natural environment in graduate school, may you always act knowing that we are the stewards of the air, the land, and the seas. Those of you in the healthcare field, do your best to help others be strong in mind, body, and spirit. To the artists among you and those in the humanities, have patience when artistic creations take time, energy, effort, and patronage. And to all of you, Ikoai Kwan, be strong, have courage, and in these often trying times, live in peace and harmony. And lastly, don't forget to sing and dance once in a while. So, Gunashji Shawa, thank you, and congratulations, graduates.
Thank you, Annie.